Ukrainian drones are torching Russian refineries. They are severing Russian rail lines, and they are hitting bases located deep inside of Russia. Meanwhile, cyber attacks are choking the money pipes that keep the Kremlin afloat, and the fuel shortages are spreading throughout Russia. Meanwhile, the Russian TV insists that everything is completely fine. There is nothing to be alarmed by. But the government's not so sure about that. That's why they are increasing domestic surveillance, because they don't know how to justify why life is seemingly out of control for so many Russians now today. My name is Jason Smart. I'm a special correspondent for the Kyiv Post. Last night, there were massive explosions across Ukraine. And here in Kyiv, we could certainly hear them. Over a half dozen times, we heard the air raid sirens go off. The machine gun fire would pick up, like the air defense, as the drones grew closer and closer. And through the night, hearing those explosions, it was interesting this morning to have a conversation at 6 a.m. with an American radio program, Bradley J. in Boston. And a caller asked a question, an excellent question, a very reasonable question. He asked, what does Ukraine have to do with me? Is it really worth the cost? Now, it's clear that Russia is a basket case, but when one reviews the cost math, the battlefield reality, and what's happening inside of Russia, it becomes even more apparent that it is a head-on collision train wreck, which one could sort of expect from a country that is a gas station that masquerades as a country, as my former boss, John McCain, once said. And politics aside, John McCain was an active supporter of Ukraine because he understood that Russia is our enemy. Helping Ukraine is not charity. It is common sense. Russia has fought the West for decades. Globally, today, Russia believes that it is actively at war with the West. And even if we do not want a war with Russia, we don't get a choice. Russia has chosen war. As Leon Trotsky said, you may not be interested in war, but war is interested in you. Russia started this war, and incredibly right now, Russia can be defeated. Consider this. In the Cold War, it drained from the United States over $18 trillion. That works out to about $400 billion a year or $1.1 billion per day. And it cost over 100,000 American lives. Now today, the first 2 years of this war, we were paying just 22 cents per American with 0 U.S. soldiers in the fight to help Ukraine dismantle Russia's war machine. This will prevent future wars. This is not charity. It is the smartest and cheapest investment we can make to make sure there are no future conflicts, to make sure that we will not spend trillions of dollars nor countless American lives. We can stop Russia now. Russia is not operating in isolation. It has partners. It has allies. It has China. It has Iran. It has North Korea. It works with Hezbollah and it works with Hamas. By stopping Russia today, here in Ukraine, they all will see that. They will determine whether or not they want a future confrontation with NATO based upon what they see today here in Ukraine. And more than the increased cost, the trillions of dollars that a global war would actually cost, it would cost even more the price of so many American sons that would come home in body bags. So for the cost of a stick of gum per day, we could prevent that ghastly outcome. Knowing that our enemies are looking at the current situation today, deciding if and how they would attack NATO, we must stop them. This is preventative in Ukraine by doing what is necessary to prevent Russia from advancing. So knowing this, knowing that our enemies are calculating their next moves right now, think about this. Anyone who says Ukraine is too steep a cost for Americans to pay is effectively arguing that our sons' lives are not worth the price of a stick of gun. These are the facts, though, that many in the West do not hear. They do not realize how Russia fits into their lives, how right now Ukraine is doing something that is remarkable. And it's something that will help protect our countries and our own families and save us money at the same time. Help me get this message to more people in the West. How? Please like this video. Please subscribe to this channel and consider becoming a channel member today. And as many of you are already aware, the day before yesterday, we surpassed 200,000 subscribers, all in just 3 months. And since then, just in the past day and a half, there's been another 8,000 subscribers, 4% growth. That's truly incredible. And I know that's not a credit to me, but because we are on the same team, we're on the same page, we understand that standing with Ukraine is standing with good in its fight against evil. But more than that, it makes the world more safe. We are part of something that will make the world a better place. As John McCain said, nothing in life is more liberating than to fight for a cause larger than yourself, something that encompasses you, but is not defined by your existence alone. Thank you. So, despite what we see going on now, the Kremlin doesn't value lives. It doesn't seem to really care what happens to its sons, or its economy, or its people. And in fact, that's why they are now reliant on things like fake news. So there's a story that came out in the past couple of days where they said that Russian hackers had hacked the Ukrainian general staff and exposed that over 1,700,000 Ukrainians had been killed or injured during the course of the war. But that mathematically is simply impossible. Keep in mind, at no point has there been more than 1 million soldiers in the Ukrainian military. It's impossible that they would have 1.7 million casualties then, because that would just collapse the nation. And if you look at the numbers, it becomes more and more incoherent. It would imply that out of everybody who's been drafted, more than 1 in 3 are being killed or injured. That's impossible. That's simply not happening. So why do they do this? Why do they release this information? It's a psychological operation. It is not data. It is not hacking. The aim is to depress morale, to fracture trust in NATO, and the slow aid, to put pressure on Ukraine to end this war, so that people think that the war cannot be won. It comes at too high a cost. But the cost asymmetry here, it works the other direction, not that way. Ukraine's losses are far less than that of Russia. And the cost asymmetry is not just about the lives. Yes, Russia has lost over 1 million men, injured or killed, and it's taken less than 1% of Ukrainian territory to achieve that. According to British intelligence, for them to take the rest of the oblast that they're currently partially occupying in Ukraine would take another few years and another almost couple million lives. So it's wholly unrealistic that Russia can advance, that Russia can win. And that's why we make such a mistake when we give Russia the benefit of the doubt. We treat it as if it's a country that has a role in making decisions. Russia is a broken country. Russia is an impoverished country. And the West can force Russia to do what it wants. But that means taking a decision, that it's worth it. But the asymmetry, it's not just about lives. Consider this. A typical Ukrainian drone costs about 0.1% of a Russian interceptor shot. So each one of these intercepts for Russia is costing it tons more money than they can possibly afford. Every one of these strikes, think of it as a cost-to-kill chain. Cheap attacks are triggering premium defense and costly aftermath. So we see the examples of this math working out for us in the past few days. Look at the case of Rostov, the oil refinery. It was burning. Millions, tens of millions of dollars worth of oil went up in flames as the refinery is destroyed, and it's going to be very hard to replace. So that cost the Ukrainians a few $1,000s in total, and it sets Russia back. Russia has no ability to just rebuild these factories. There's no ability to just get more of these shots, to get more of the air defense, because Russia doesn't produce enough. So Ukraine's strategy now is draining the Russians of their ability to defend their front lines and to defend within Russia. But there's something else here. In occupied Crimea, we see that there's been explosions and heavy smoke that has disrupted the movement of forces and patrols in the region, because Ukraine is continuing to carry out attacks. And these attacks are costing the Russians. We see that the raids in Ruinous, they've cut off the power for the villages there. They've delayed the trains. The nuclear plant, it briefly disconnected before service was resumed. All these outages are costing Russia. It forces the grid hardening and it backs up generation. It puts the emergency crew over time. And Russia's Ministry of Defense claims that it's shooting down all the drones. It's very successful. It says it shot down many of them just in the past day over Crimea and the Black Sea. But the fact is, just one wave of these attacks is costing Russia tens of millions of dollars. It's something that is untenable for Russia to continue. And what's interesting about this is that in Zaporizhia, on the Zaporizhia direction, Ukraine's National Guard used a bomber drone to destroy a long-range air defense system. That system cost $40 million. So once again, Ukraine's investment, several $100s, cost Russia $40 million. And this overall degrades the entire network built of the billion-dollar package that was built that was used by the Russians. It's harder and harder for them to close these gaps. But the attacks that Ukraine is carrying out are cost efficient. Look at the recent hacking attacks. So Russia's main commodity exchange handles about 99% of the organized oil, gas, coal, metals trade. It was hacked by the Ukrainians. And what's amazing about that was the penetrations into the private sections and the user accounts blocked traders. It forced shutdowns and became a self-inflicted denial of service on the war economy. Russia doesn't know how to deal with this. It's never dealt with these sorts of attacks, these asymmetrical attacks that are occurring across Russia. And this is why we see the situation is getting worse. We see things like the fuel shortages, which are rapidly spreading throughout Russia. So on the Moscow to Rostov to the Krasnodar highway, trucks formed long queues and in places stood motionless for hours upon hours. In Primorsky Krai, drivers waited in extended lines at stations, not being sure if when they got there would be any gasoline left. In Crimea, we see that first the AI-95 disappeared, then the AI-92. Now drivers are paying inflated price gouging prices to make up for the situation. There's no other way to get gas unless they pay exorbitant costs. People are abandoning their cars on the side of roads. Packed buses, minibuses are abandoned on the side of roads. And this scarcity is triggering black markets in Russia. Police now are having to escort the tankers to make sure they don't get robbed. Canceled deliveries are increasing. The cost of delivering goods in Russia is going up, which means the cost for Russians is increasing. The cost to transport military goods just gets higher and higher. And we don't have all the news of what happens in Russia, but we do see the signs the system is cracking. In Original City, a patriotic TV shoot was meant to go to a cemetery and to show how proud the people were of their military. But it didn't really work out that way. It sort of imploded, in fact. A woman stormed the set and denounced the war and the leadership of the country. Because that's what normal people feel. The government tries to say that they are very proud of what they're doing. They're very proud of their thousands of newly disabled veterans. But the fact is, the population doesn't feel that way. The population understands this is a spectacle. They're trying to normalize loss. But in fact, people speak out, even like this woman today. So though the state continues to say that it triumphed, that it won, there's never been this much strain within Russia. And the government, once again, goes back to what it usually does. It tries to monitor people. It tries to spy more on its citizens to make sure that they are not complaining, that they're not looking for solutions. And in fact, we've talked about Max, the messenger app that everybody has to get now. So Max is amazing. You have to have it on your phone if you wish to communicate with your kid's school, if you wish to sell property. Any sort of communications with the government has to go through Max. But Max got a lot of problems. One, security officials say that Max will take photos and record all of your audio, all of your videos, all the photos you have on your phone, and even your keystrokes, even if you did not send the message. So knowing that they're spying on everybody, there's some concern in the society. Of course, the chairman of the IT committee in the Duma, the parliament in Russia, says that we should investigate anyone who complains about the app because they're probably under foreign influence. And this is obviously absurd, but the fact is there's serious problems with this. Everybody understands that, in fact, there's a very good chance this information, which has copied millions of people's cell phone data, it's so unsecure that it could leak at some point in the very near future. But more than that, to try to get people on board, to get them to have this app on their phone, which people are not keen to have, they were caught, the Russian government was caught, paying people to click like on the app in the App Store. They're paying people to send reviews saying it deserves 5 stars because they have no other way to try to convince people. And now the state is force installing the app on people's phones. But this is all just a distraction. For us in the West, we have to understand, what is it that the Russians do? Why are they doing this? They can't monitor us like they monitor their people. So what are they doing with us? Well, Russia today is trying to test the boundaries of NATO. Poland's defense minister said that a drone exploded in the Lublin region. And in fact, it looks like it was a provocation by the Russians. So there's a lot of details we're still waiting to learn about. But this was about 100 kilometers, 62 miles from Ukraine. And what's incredible about it was that it was so close to Warsaw, 25 miles, which is about 40 kilometers from Warsaw. It shattered windows and everything else. But what makes it interesting is the radar didn't pick it up, which highlights there's a big problem with the coverage gaps that we currently see even in NATO countries. And this is not the first time. It's important to note the airspace over multiple countries has been violated by Russia. We saw this in Lithuania, Latvia, Romania, Bulgaria, Moldova. These are all probes. These are probes to see what the West will do when Russia will cross a red line. And this is a dangerous game that they're playing, but they think that they can get away with it. They think that the West will not stand up to them. But when we look overall at the situation, the pattern is remarkably consistent because the math only points in one way. These cheap attacks that Ukraine is able to execute are very expensive for Russia to defend. And when they're successful, they bleed Moscow of cash. The cyber pressure is choking off the revenues. It's cutting off the exchange points. And just look at the public patience. It's running thin. It's totally running out, just like the gasoline throughout the country. So the propaganda has its role. They try to convince people that everything is fine, everything is swell. But we all see that as not. Everybody understands that the situation is getting worse and worse. And that's why it's so critical that today we take advantage of this. We take advantage of the fact that Russia is weakened. That Russia, which started a war with us, can be stopped. So keeping Ukraine supplied, costing us 22 cents per day, works out to about $80 per year. And that will prevent us from a future war. Let the cost kill chain grind down the Russian war machine. Let's just pay the pennies now to avoid paying trillions and thousands of our citizens' lives in the future. Because right now, Russia can be stopped. Russia is collapsing from the inside. Economically, politically, and socially, the situation is growing further out of control. So now is the time to hit the gas and push Russia down so it's not a threat ever again to anyone in the world. Thank you for watching. Please like this video. Please subscribe to this channel. Share this video with others, and let me know what you think. How can we better get the message of Ukraine to more people? As always, thank you for supporting Ukraine.